Okay, YouTube. So today we're going to take a look at how I do my water changes. Sure, it's not much different than anybody else does, but I've had quite a few requests for a video on how this is done, or at least how I do it. So, figured I'd pick these this rack of 10 gallons that I have my grow outs in. I got some pistogramma orange flash and some triple red cockatoides in here, and I've got my ram grow outs in this tank over here. I got the ram parents, the breeding pair down below, and that tank right now is not occupied. It's earmarked for another project. So, at any rate, I use the Python, Aquarium, Lee's water change systems. They're all pretty much the same. It's just the quality of the tubing and the construction of the thing that really differs between the three of them. Python being the king of. This particular Python setup right here is 20 plus years old. That's how old it is, and it's still going. And the only thing I've replaced on it is the connection at the faucet end, where the adapter that screws into the actual faucet to adjust it to a hose fitting. That's the only thing that I've replaced in this whole setup, other than adding a little extension hose to it. So if you want something that's really going to last and you think you're really going to be in the hobby for a long time, go with a Python. If you're not so sure, then save yourself a couple of bucks and go with one of the Lee's or the Aquarium setup. Aquarium being the most prominent of the two that you can get just about anywhere. So at any rate, what I'm doing here, these two particular tanks are run off of sponge filters. This has a matin filter in the back plus a sponge filter. One of the reasons being that it is kind of overstocked with the babies, and as they grow, I want to make sure that I got plenty of filtration in here to take care of anything that might, any kind of problems that might raise in the water. Even though I do a weekly water change on these, still better safe than sorry. You can never have too much filtration, as they say. Over here in the ram tanks, the German blue ram tank just has one of the dual, as you can see in there, one of those dual lift type sponge filters, and it usually also has a smaller lift filter in it, and I don't think you can see that right now. As a matter of fact, it does, but you can't see it. It's towards the back. So once again, never too much filtration, and if I need one of these other filters for another tank setup or something, I can always snatch one out. So at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and go in here. Being that I don't have a power filter on this thing, I don't have to really worry about it. If I was to have a hang-on back or a canister filter or something like that, I would obviously turn that off first. In this case, I don't have to really worry about that. Now, this does have some washer tank towards the back, and I don't know if you can see it, but as you kind of scoop around up underneath it, that's usually where a lot of your dirt will collect. And this is a bare bottom tank, and get a little bit too much of the sub-washer tank and everything in there. Kind of bring it to the top and let it go. Now you can see towards the back, I guess this camera is focused in on that, towards the back over here, you see where all the dirt has collected. And I'll turn the siphon back on, and I'll show you how I'm turning this on and off here in a minute. If you're with one of the cheaper ones and you don't have the actual valve to turn them on and off, which I'll show you in a minute on this one, you can always just crimp the tubing. I'm not sure if this camera is able to. This is a head mount camera, so I'm not sure if I really got. When you get one of them that gets in the tube, of course you stop the suction and let him swim back out. And there's another one. Come on. There you go. Need more time. Yeah. I see him in there. Anyway. So at any rate, basically scoop around, get the worst of the detritus out of the bottom. Most of the time the fish will stay away, but sometimes it will kind of get in there. And once you're done doing that, what I usually do is kind of stick it over here in the corner, tilt it back just a little bit. This way it can drain down a lot more efficiently. Nasty stuff out. Now, in the 10-gallon tanks, since I do it weekly, I usually take it a little bit beyond halfway, maybe do a 60%. Oh, by the way, when you got your tube down here in the corner like this, you kind of watch the fish, because a lot of times it'll pick up some little bits and pieces, and they think it's food, so they come swimming over out of curiosity, and sometimes if they get too close to the edge there, they will get sucked in. So you don't want to, this is not one of those that you start and then walk away from. If you do have to do that and you got a lot going on, I would recommend getting, talk to your mom, sister, best girlfriend, whatever, and see if they got an old pair of pantyhose. And then if they do, you take and cut the end of the pantyhose off where the toes would be. And you use that as a filter on the end of this tube. That would be after you've already done the initial suck up of the detritus. And you're just, emptying water. But that way it'll keep the fish out. Filters anything smaller from getting out, especially if you got shrimp, something like that. So, this is the boring part. Where you sit and just let the water drain. And I'm going to let that do its thing here. Meanwhile, while it's doing that, during the winter time, which I'm getting ready to get this thing back up and running, I've done another video on this. If you want to look back in my videos, and you'll find some videos on how exactly this is set up. But it is basically just a trash can that I bought at Lowe's. And if you look down inside, it's got a heater, 200 watt heater, and no, 150 watt heater, and a sump pump that I got at Harbor Freight or one of those general type stores. with some hosing hooked up to it. Also have a large air stone that goes down in it. Right now this it's empty. I haven't been using it during the summertime. As a matter of fact, it was about a quarter of the way full, and it's evaporated that much since the last time I used it. But I fill it up, and I got the hose hooked up to this gadget. Make sure that's not sucked all the way down. Which you just hang over the side of the tank, and you see you got a T here, so the water can come out either side here. And I got a valve right here where I can turn the flow on or off, or restrict it. It's a ball valve, so I can restrict the flow down. So when I first start out, I usually keep it restricted. Once this is underwater and you get water up to about this level, then I turn it on full blast. Usually it's okay for the fish at that point. But that's how I usually refill during the winter when the water coming out of the tap is really cold. So that way I can fill that up ahead of time, a day or so ahead of time, and put the heater on it and let it get up to temperature, to what the temperature that the tank would be, and I'm good to go. So for refills, I already have seasoned water set up for the return water. Now, being that our water around here we still haven't really gotten cold around here in South Carolina. So the water coming out of the tap is still at about, I'd say it's about 70 degrees or whatever. So I just tap a little bit of warm water in with it to bring it up to about 78, which doesn't take much. And then from there, I can do my refills and add my dechlor. And as you can see here, it's telling you about some of the fish that will go over and think that it's food. There was one caught up there a little bit. If you look back a little bit, right in the corner over here, there's a small one right there. They tend to try to go over it, think that it's food jumping around or something. So that's about done. I'll pull that guy out. Okay. Now, I am assuming that everybody knows how these Python / Aquarium / Lees type water change systems work. I'm going to go over that real quick for you here. Let me adjust this other camera. Now, obviously, you have your suction tube at the end. And back a couple of feet, you have another valve. And this valve allows you to, as you're doing your suction, if you need to turn it off, you can flip it that way. If you need to stomp it down a little bit, slow the suction down a little bit, you can do that. Or open it up full bore and do your suction. This also works in the refill aspect of it. You can hang your hose there, and when you're getting close to the top, you can also, put it down a little bit and fill it slowly as it gets towards the top. So let me readjust the camera here. Put that on there, and we will walk in here. See how the other end of the system works. Now, one of the things you will find out with these when you're doing water changes is that, especially if you've got Java moss or any small plant material, it's going to kind of get hung up here in the end. So before you go to try to do a refill and close this little valve at the bottom off, you kind of want to get in there and pull all that crap out, because you might not get a good seal when you go to redo this. You just kind of feel around the edge there and see if you can pull any more out. Do a good spurt like that. Okay. Now, the way this thing works is basically, if anybody, well, I don't know if the younger crowd is familiar with it, but some of the older crowd will remember the old waterbed era that we went through back in the
70s, 80s, and early 90s. Water beds got real big. And this is the same thing that you would have gotten back with if you had an old water bed or whatever. It's the same thing that we use to fill and drain our water beds with. So this in particular was made. It is part of the Python system. It's a little bit more stout than the ones that came with the water beds, but it's if you look at the Aquarium and the Lees one, I think it's the exact same one they used with the water beds. At any rate, this is the end of the hose here. This is what goes to the other end of the hose. And what happens is, how this works is, there's a little venturi down in this area right here inside of this. And you screw this on. You get a little adapter with this kit. And on the end of your faucet, on a standard faucet, you're going to have one of these things. And what you need to do is take this loose, unscrew this little thing, and then different faucets will have different kinds of fittings to fit on this. But it comes with a couple of different standardized ones that will fit your faucet. And you screw that adapter in there, and then you attach this to the adapter. Alright, and as I said, inside here there's a little venturi, and as that water comes down through that venturi, it causes a suction right here, because this pipe is coming off the side. So it comes down right past this, and as it does it, it causes this to cause a vacuum, a suction. It wants to go the same way the fast running water is going, which is out towards the end of this. So once that suction is created, you have your it starts your siphon for you. And once the siphon's going, the siphon goes. Another trick of the trade, if you live in an area where you got to pay for the water, and you got multiple tanks, and your water bill has been outrageous, and your significant other is beaming at you whenever you open up the water bill, know that once you start the siphon, once you put the other end of the hose into your water, your tank, and you start the siphon with this, once it's flowing, and you got a full, coming from the tank, and the water's all full through the hose all the way out, you can turn the water off here. You do not need to leave it on. The siphon is achieved, so it will still continue to siphon the water out of the tank, unless you're talking about a tank that is like on the floor. If it's on the floor and it's that much lower than where the sink is, you're going to have to keep the water on to keep that suction going. But most of your standard tanks that are on stands and everything, this will work just fine for. And you'll be able to, do your plunge thing and drain your water and everything like that while leaving the water off the whole time, and it'll just siphon out here. It is a little bit slower that way, but you save a lot of money in water. Okay, that being said, now that we know all that, we are going to take this valve. Now this valve is open right now, which creates the siphon for the suction for the siphon. Okay, now when you flip it up and turn it around this way, you're shutting the bottom off. So the only way the water has to go is this way. But before I do that, what I want to do is get the temperature right. So I'm going to turn the hot on for a minute, let this get scalding. This may take a minute or two, but you do want to get this up to full temperature, because if you start it when it's just starting to get warm and then you adjust it, it's going to get hotter. So you want to make sure that the water is as hot as it can be. And I think that's about it. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on a little bit, and then I'm going to turn some cold on. Come down here and feel the temperature. Now I do this by hand because I've been doing it by hand for years, and I kind of just know, I guess kind of like a mother knows, when you're doing the milk thing for a baby, and squirt it on your arm and say, yeah, that's good enough. But I kind of know the feel of about 78 degrees, so once I get to that point, a little bit more cold, and if you want to air a little bit on the cold side. Alright, so shut it off. Now the water is going down through the hose. So I generally try to get back into the room real quick before it comes up to the end, because I have had times like that happen. And you don't want to take your time, come back in and find that you got 5 gallons of water on the floor because the end flipped out and ended up on the floor, and you were just pumping all that water out onto the floor. Okay, so I'm adding conditioner, and no folks, this is not Aquarium conditioner, although that's would be fine if you want to use that, but I do use Prime, and it's just reusing the container. It's a neat little small container, so I would squirt a little bit in it to start. Oh, one other thing I do want to go over is heaters. Now, I have my heaters basically vertical. They're almost on the bottom of the tank, which allowed me to leave them on while I did this water change. If you have, or actually horizontal, I should say, they're horizontal on the bottom of your tank. If you have yours mounted vertically, where they're up and down, and the adjustment is up here at the top or whatever, you do want to unplug your heater while you're doing this. That's very important, because you can burn a heater out that way. It needs to be, it's designed to be underwater while it's on, and if you take it out of water and it thinks it needs to keep heating up, it can burn the whole element out, and it can cause all kinds of problems. So just a note, that is one of the main reasons I keep mine down horizontally towards the bottom. But yeah, that's, I mean, I could sit here and watch and let you guys watch the tanks fill up, but that's pretty much it, guys. I hope for those of you who had the questions about how I do my water change, this pretty much sums it up. As I said, in the warmer weather, I just use this simple return method, and I haven't had any problems out of it. I have heard of horror stories and read horror stories in magazines, and about, you know, people putting the water straight in from their tap, and all of a sudden they're all their fish died or whatever. The only thing I could say there is know your water company. You know, I mean, that really is number one. We don't really keep fish, we keep water, because that's what we spend most of the time trying to adjust and make a good home for our fish. You know, it's the water. The fish just live in it, you know, but we have to make sure that all the parameters in the water are right so that the fish can be happy. So really, we're keeping water in this hobby. But a good thing to do is definitely get your local water company's number. On the internet, they usually, if you find the, you know, whatever it is, municipal water systems, you know, Jonesville, Greenville, Abbeville, New York, whatever, you know, whatever your local water system is, go look them up online. Most of them will have a downloadable PDF that'll give you all the particulates and everything that's in the local water as they test it. If you can't find it there, like I say, get on the phone, do it old-fashioned, give them a call, ask for their testing department, or just tell them, say, look, you know, hey, I keep aquarium, aquatic fish, tropical fish, and got a lot of money in this, and I need to know what's in the water, you know, what's coming out of my tap. And they can give you a basic starting point. Now remember that the test results you're getting are what they have at their end. The water still has to go through miles and miles of pipe to get to your spigot. So some of that piping might be old, and it may be iron, made of iron, it may be made of copper or whatever, where it can pick up a lot of things extra along the way. So be you know, prepared to understand that part of it. You know, just because they say that there's, you know, like 0.16% copper in the water at their end where they're exporting it, it may go through, you know, 40 or 50 miles of old copper pipe that's leaching some of the copper into it, and it may be, you know, much higher levels of copper in it once it gets to your spigot. So, just a little tip that I've learned through the years. You definitely want to know what kind of water's coming out. I mean, if you're really anal about it, what you need to do is go ahead and get a water sample and find an independent lab that will do the tests on it for you, and that way you really know exactly what's coming out of your tap. And mail them off a sample or whatever, or do whatever needs to be done. I'm sure there's plenty of labs out there that you can find in the United States. Probably not going to be cheap to have it done, but if you're keeping saltwater fish and you're setting up a large tank with a lot of fish in it, and you put a lot of money into it, hey, it may be worth it, key thing is water. We're really keeping water in boxes. The fish just happen to be living in it, and if we don't do our due diligence in getting the chemistry right on that water, the fish don't live, or the shrimp don't live, or the plants don't live. So know what's in your water and do those water changes. When I first started out, I went by the industry standard, which was once every 2 weeks to once a month, and never could understand why none of my fish lasted more than a year or two and would die off suddenly. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've got some fish that are pushing 7 or 8 years that they say only live 4 to 5 years. So doing a weekly to bi-weekly water change really makes a big difference. Fortunately enough, we do happen to have very good water here in western South Carolina. It's very, very soft. It's just about RO water. It's like TDS on it is like 77 ppm out of the tap, 60 to 77 ppm, sometimes 100 at worst, and that's usually in the springtime or summertime when there's a little bit more runoff because of rain. But it's ultra soft around here, and some people say, "Oh, I'd kill for water like that." Well, it has its strong points, but it also has its weak points, because I have to add a lot more chemicals in for the plants to keep them happy, because they like a lot of that stuff that's in that total dissolved hardness that is not in my water, like calcium and magnesium and all those good things. So I got to resupply all that stuff to the plants to keep them happy. But yeah, I'm getting to a ramble here. As you can see, about completed with the water change. So I think I'm going to leave that with you. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Please like, dislike, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hey, people, if I have no problem with you disliking. I really don't. I mean, you don't like the way I'm doing things, that's fine. But if you can, if there's a reason why you're disliking, please leave a comment. I mean, I can't fix what I don't know is broke. So, if you don't like the way I sound, well, I can't really change that. My voice is my voice. But if you don't like the lighting, or you think I talk too quick, or I didn't give you enough information on this or that or whatever, let me know. It's the only way I can fix it, So, anyways, thank you to my subscribers, and everybody have a great week. And till later, I will say adieu.